The new butler is the heartthrob male lead. By chance, he redeemed my 3 villainous sisters, coaxing them into becoming his loyal dogs, offering up all their resources to him. I, however, was jealous that he took away the affection and tried to sabotage him at every turn. In the end, my 3 sisters grew to despise me. The eldest is a cold-faced CEO. She froze all my bank cards and kicked me out of the family. The second is a gentle doctor. She secretly switched my medication, leaving me in constant, unbearable pain. The third is a popular celebrity. She chose to conceal my identity and allowed her fans to harass me online. I ended up in a tragic situation, abandoned and left for dead. When I was reborn, I decided to be an honest person, but to my surprise, my inner voice can be heard by my sisters. Chapter 1. The last time I saw them was in a rundown rental apartment. I sat in a wheelchair, wearing clothes stained with oil, while Charles, dressed in haute couture that he could never afford before, was surrounded by my 3 sisters, who formed a circle around him. He glanced at me sideways, sneering, "For the sake of us once being the best of friends, how about you apologize to me today? Call me brother-in-law, and I'll forgive you, bringing you back to the family. What do you say? Call him brother-in-law. He doesn't deserve it. It was he who ruined my appearance, turning me into a cripple." His shameless entry into the family was nothing but a scheme to bring it down. Unfortunately, no one believed my words. Everyone thought I was jealous of Charles and that I had brought this upon myself. I gritted my teeth, spitting at him. Call you brother-in-law. I'd rather die. One day, your ugly true face will be exposed in. Before I could finish, a slap landed on my face with such force that I felt my teeth loosen. The ringing in my ears was deafening. Struggling to open my eyes, I saw my eldest sister's cold expression. Her brow was furrowed, and she looked at me as if I were something repulsive. "Jack, if you can't control your mouth, I have no problem tearing it out for you." I covered my face, gritting my teeth. "Sister," she interrupted me again. "Don't call me sister. Since the day you framed Charles, you are no longer our brother." Her words were like daggers, piercing deep into my bleeding heart. The light in my eyes gradually faded. I wanted to say something, but my throat was so dry I couldn't make a sound. My heart started to ache again. I pressed my hand to my chest, gasping for air. Medicine. My second sister, who rarely smoked, had taken up the habit again because of Charles. She stepped closer and pressed her still-burning cigarette butt onto the back of my hand. Ignoring my muted scream of pain, she pointed at my chest and mocked. "Jack, your congenital heart disease might be because your heart is too black. I don't think it's worth treating anymore." The pain made me fall out of my wheelchair, nearly suffocating. My third sister slowly squatted down, looking at my nearly skeletal form, furrowing her brow. "What? Are you playing the victim now? Jack, do you really think pretending to be pitiful will get our forgiveness? Let me tell you, you're thinking too much, and it looks like you haven't learned your lesson either." Her words were full of meaning. I knew what she meant, because I had insulted Charles once. She allowed his fans to mercilessly abuse me. Some even followed me, pushing me out of my wheelchair and watching me crawl on the ground. They often threw dead rats at my door, and the landlord couldn't bear it anymore, kicking me out. I had no choice but to rent this rundown shack next to a garbage dump, one with a door that wouldn't even lock. Without my medication, breathing itself became excruciating, and I felt like a dying fish, collapsing on the ground with wounds all over. My vision started to blur, and I tried to recall any moment in my life that wasn't painful, but nothing came to mind. My sisters ignored my outstretched hands, turning and leaving. They muttered a curse under their breath. How unlucky. I opened my mouth but couldn't summon the strength to struggle any longer. This was the second life I had been reborn into. No matter how carefully I planned, how much I tried, in the end, I couldn't escape the halo of the chosen male lead. This world was a lucky coy story, and Charles was the male lead, working to destroy the family in order to clear the way for the woman he loved. My 3 sisters were the villains, but they would fall in love with Charles at first sight, be saved by him, abandon everything, and willingly become his dogs, offering him all their resources. In the end, to save their lives, my 3 sisters each became a cripple, blind, or a vegetable, willing to sacrifice themselves for Charles. To save their fate, I desperately tried to expose Charles's true intentions. In their eyes, however, I was just jealous that Charles had taken my affection. I went from being the beloved eldest son of the family to a despised cripple, reviled by everyone. No matter how many times I was reborn, Charles would always move between my 3 sisters, successfully replacing me in their hearts. I knew that when I opened my eyes again, everything would return to the beginning. But this time, I was tired. Chapter 2. When I opened my eyes, I was still a little shaken. The rundown, filthy shack had transformed into a bright and cozy living room. Warm yellow lights illuminated the delicately arranged food in front of me. A familiar voice sounded from beside me, tinged with a hint of grievance. "Jack, why aren't you eating? Did I not cook to your taste? I'm sorry. I didn't know you didn't like this. Whatever you want to eat, I'll make it for you. My pupils contracted. It was Charles's voice. At this point, we had already become friends, and he had saved my 3 sisters several times. His reputation as the lucky koi of the Bai family had started to spread, often bringing good fortune to the family. He was no longer wearing servant clothes but was dressed in the designer outfits I had given him, looking even more like the Bai family heir than I did. He wore a face full of grievance, biting his lip like a big man unwilling to speak his mind. I specially asked the housekeeper. She said, "You love seafood, so if you're not eating it, is it because I made it?" Don't worry. I followed the housekeeper's instructions step by step. The act was getting intense, but I still remained silent. Charles became more anxious. "Jack, why aren't you talking to me? Are you disgusted because I came from the slums? Do you think I'm dirty?" I opened my mouth, but all that came out were meaningless sounds. I had developed aphasia. Even in this new life, I couldn't escape the shadow of the past. I pressed my hand against my throat, trying to force myself to say something, worried that if I upset Charles, his 3 devoted sisters would use it as an excuse to torment me. But I still couldn't say a complete sentence. The eldest sister's gaze shifted between me and Charles. After a moment, her expression darkened. "Jack, is this how a Bai family member behaves? No matter whether you want to eat it or not, you should at least finish it." It's Charles's heartfelt gesture. I lowered my eyes, unable to stop myself from sneering inwardly. These 3 were already completely focused on Charles. I thought to myself, how could I possibly reject you? Anyway, you'll be another master of the Bai family soon. What right do I, a cripple who was kicked out of Bai family and lives in the slums, have to reject you? Anyone would think Charles is your real brother with how much you defend him. Oh wait, not a real brother, but a lover brother, and who still remembers my seafood allergy. My life is worth nothing now. For some reason, the room suddenly fell silent. The 3 women, who had been smiling a moment ago, suddenly grew cold and stopped talking. The nauseating seafood was forced down one bite at a time. I suppressed the urge to vomit and forced a smile at Charles. The eldest sister, who had been scowling, as though something deep inside had been pricked, watched me finish the seafood quickly. Seeing my pale face, she was about to leave but quickly reached out. "Jack." The second sister shot her a glare, signaling her to shut up. She turned to me with a gentle expression. "Jack, do you feel unwell today? Let me take a look." Okay, she was a doctor, and it was her who prescribed the heart medication I took in my previous life and also the one who stopped it. Now, she watched me suffer in pain, having long forgotten that I had once been her beloved brother. I stood at the top of the stairs, looking back with my expression hidden in the shadows, where no one could see. I thought to myself, it's just an allergy, it won't kill me. I'm really tired, just stop torturing me. Whatever you want, I'll agree to it. The second sister was stunned. Her face turned pale as she apologized. "I didn't mean to forget about your seafood allergy. Didn't mean to forget." The excuse was both clumsy and laughable. I couldn't be bothered to keep up the act with them anymore. Without a second glance, I turned and left without any hesitation. Chapter 3. As soon as Charles appeared, I knew, no matter what I did, it was always the day I wouldn't be the favored one. So I gave up. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door, pulling me out of my chaotic thoughts. It was Charles again, with his usual pitiful tone. His voice cracked with a hint of tears, and he knocked on the door again and again, as if he would keep knocking until I opened it. "Jack, what's wrong? Did I make you upset? I'm sorry. Please don't ignore me. Okay, aren't we best friends?" His words were full of grievance, but I heard another voice at the same time in my ear. It was still Charles's voice, but the words he spoke were completely different from what he was saying aloud. "System, what's wrong with Jack? These recent actions weren't written in the plot either. And now those female side characters think I'm bullying him. They've deducted a full 10 points of favorability from me." Then, another mechanical voice followed. "Please rest assured, host, I've investigated. Their favorability towards you is still above 50, and the decrease in favorability is still within a controllable range. System." I felt as if I had fallen into an ice cave, the cold creeping up my spine. Though I was in a warm room, I couldn't help but shiver. It was those voices again. In my previous life, when Charles had set me up, causing the car accident and leaving me briefly unconscious, I had often heard him communicating with this mechanical voice in my ear. I had heard them talking about ruining the Bai family, turning it into a stepping stone for Charles. After I regained consciousness, I immediately went to find my eldest sister, intending to tell her what had happened. But no matter what I said, I only received a cold, disdainful look from her. Charles emerged from my sister's study lounge, looking every bit the charming boy next door type. "Sister Sandra, Jack must have just been feeling down, which is why he did these foolish things. It's okay, I forgive him." My eldest sister's face grew darker as Charles played the role of the wronged man. She whispered sharply to me, "Jack, what has happened to you? You tried to stage the car accident to frame Charles, and now you're trying to slander him in front of me. How could he still care for you and look after you when you were unconscious? And I told him not to blame you. The rest of the details are a blur in my memory, but I remember that from that moment on, I was truly rejected by the Bai family. My small suitcase contained only a few simple clothes, and it was pouring rain outside. Yet, my sister remained unmoved, her expression cold as she shoved me out. She looked down at me, filthy and covered in mud. Jack, since you can't accept Charles, Bai family will no longer recognize you as the young master. Without the status of the Bai family's heir, what do you think you are now? Chapter 4. Thinking back on these moments, my body trembled. What's he going to do now? I didn't need to guess. I already knew there was more than just Charles outside the door. I don't know who he's trying to gain favor with this time. Whatever. It doesn't matter anymore. I'm leaving the Bai family anyway. I knew there was no avoiding it. Taking a deep breath, I walked over and opened the door. Charles's hand froze in midair as he knocked, but he wasn't embarrassed. He reached out, trying to take my hand, but I stepped aside to avoid him. Jack, he dragged out my name, speaking with a pout, but his gaze kept drifting toward the third sister standing behind him. Is something wrong? Why are you ignoring me? Please, talk to me. Okay. In the previous life, Charles only acted kind in front of my three sisters, especially when they were present. He had probably been acting for their benefit again. The third sister remained silent for a long time before finally speaking, but she was defending Charles. She looked at me, her eyes full of concealed concern. Jack, I've heard from elder sister and second sister these past few days. Is there some misunderstanding between you and Charles? Weren't you two very close before? You don't know how many times he's cried because you've been ignoring him recently. She sighed, her expression one of pure concern for me. I know a very good psychologist. If you don't want to talk to elder sister or second sister, you can talk to me. I'll take you to see him tomorrow. Okay. What kind of nonsense was this? Trying to send me to a psychologist without even understanding anything. I thought to myself, of course, in your eyes, if someone doesn't like Charles, they must have psychological issues, right? When you allowed your fans to harass me online, where was your concern for my mental health? Are you trying to get revenge for Charles and lock me up in a psychiatric hospital? The third sister froze, her expression gradually twisting. She glanced at Charles, then at me, and finally, in disbelief, lowered her gaze to her own hands. Jack, she hesitated before speaking. Did I do something wrong? Please don't hate me, okay? My face was full of suspicion. I shook my head and quickly slammed the door shut. After the door closed, I heard a thud, followed by Charles's pained cry, Jessica. The system screamed, warning. Female character Jessica's favorability -10. Her favorability has now dropped below 50. Please, host, find a way to raise her favorability back up. Stop calling me that. The third sister's voice sounded a little dark. The other two fools were deceived by you, but I haven't. You'd better give me an explanation, or I won't hesitate to. I couldn't hear the rest of her words, but I assumed they had walked away by now. I didn't understand the third sister's sudden change of heart, and I didn't want to care about it either. Seeing how she was defending Charles now, it was only a matter of time before she followed the same path as in the previous life. Whatever Charles planned to do with the Bai family had nothing to do with me anymore. For me, nothing was more important than just surviving. Chapter 5. I hardly ever returned to the Bai family anymore, and as a result, Charles had more opportunities to appear at the Bai family's residence. The Bai family was already worried about me causing trouble, so they had hidden my identity. The outside world only knew that the Bai family had a young master who had been pampered since childhood but was in poor health, without knowing who he really was. Now, Charles had almost firmly taken on that title. He didn't bother to correct anyone when people asked. He would simply smile and say nothing. To others, it seemed like he was silently admitting that he was the true heir of the Bai family. My roommate, Daniel, looked at me and mocked. Jack, why aren't you hanging out with Charles lately? Wasn't it just at the start of the semester that you two were always taking the Bai family's car to school together? What happened? You and Charles had a fallout, and now he won't even let you ride in Bai family's car. I glanced at him, lowered my head, and continued organizing my assignments, ignoring him, but he seemed to have hit a nerve and slammed his phone down, which had crashed after his game character died. With a sharp tone, he continued, Charles doesn't even care about you anymore. You couldn't climb into the Bai family's circle, so what's the point of pretending? Charles, who was sitting beside him, looked a bit uncomfortable. He tugged at Daniel's sleeve and quietly said, Daniel, it's fine. Isn't it already well known that Jack doesn't like me? I can't force anything. Daniel crossed his arms, sneering. I just can't stand him acting all high and mighty. Wasn't he desperate to get close to you before? Now he's pretending to be some big shot. He lowered his eyes, seeming lost in thought for a moment. Then, after a brief pause, he glared at me and snarled, Let's see how long you can keep up this act. After they both made their threats, they left. Before closing the dorm door, Charles glanced back at me. His eyes were full of calculation. I heard him ask the system again. System, who has the highest favorability now? The system replied, currently, Sandra has the highest favorability. You need to act quickly. 60 favorability is still too low. You must raise it to 80 within a week, or you won't be able to foresee the next part of the plot. The next part of the plot. I remembered that it was when elder sister went to sign a contract and got stranded at sea. Charles saved her, and that was when they started to develop some feelings for each other. Whatever. What does that have to do with me? I packed up my things, planning to go to the library, but along the way, I started receiving different looks. Some people were pointing at me. Isn't that him? The one they were talking about on the forum? Yeah, Jack. The one who's willing to do anything to climb into a rich family. I heard he and Charles fell out because he failed to get into the beds of the by-family sisters. Ugh. He's so disgusting. He used to be so close to Charles. No wonder he doesn't even talk when he sees him now. If your friend was trying to seduce your sister, would you still talk to him? True. Jack really has no shame. He could have been a decent person, but instead, he chose to be a kept man. I lowered my head, wanting to ignore the words, but just as I was about to leave, a clear voice interrupted my movement. Charles, for some unknown reason, appeared near the library. He walked over and grabbed my hand tightly, not letting me leave. Jack, don't listen to what they're saying. It's all a misunderstanding. They don't believe you, but I do. His words were comforting, but they were just repeated expressions of his subjective feelings. He never offered any real proof that I was innocent. To outsiders, he looked kind, but no one would actually believe I hadn't done what they accused me of. A perfect case of the thief calling out. Catch the thief. Chapter 6. My silence seemed to confirm the accusations, and the insults from the onlookers only grew louder. Charles looked even more aggrieved and helpless than I did. His eyes filled with tears as he gazed at me. Here we go again. Is crying all Charles has left as a tactic? I lowered my eyes, just wanting to distance myself from him, but his grip on my hand was unshakable. Suddenly, the system issued a loud warning. Warning, the female antagonist, Jessica, is approaching. Please be mindful of your image and avoid any actions that could lower favorability. Charles's expression changed, and with a trembling voice, he started speaking louder in my defense. Stop saying things about Jack. He's not like that. You've all misunderstood him. With that performance, anyone would think we were the best of friends. I've seduced your sisters, and yet you're still speaking up for me. Truly, how kind-hearted you are. I let out a quiet, bitter laugh, my gaze lingering on my swollen wrist. It dawned on me a moment later that it was sore. A voice from outside the crowd interrupted my thoughts. What do you mean? Not like that. Even though she was wearing a hat and sunglasses, Jessica couldn't hide her superior figure. Soon, her passionate fans recognized her, and shrieks of excitement erupted. Isn't that Jessica? Definitely. Looks like she's here to back Charles up. After all, her little brother's been hoodwinked by Jack, and he's still determined to be friends with him. Aw, sister, you're so pretty. If I'd known, I would have talked to Charles more. Maybe he would have helped me get your autograph. The noise around me was deafening, but I felt completely detached from it all. As though I were watching from a distance. I thought to myself, when will this farce end? Isn't Jessica supposed to be here to back Charles up? Why is she still hesitating? Shouldn't she just come over and push me down, calling me names like before? Jessica furrowed her brow, and amid the astonished and gossip-filled looks, she walked directly toward Charles, and then handed the cake she was holding to me, standing behind Charles. Her voice was full of affection as she spoke. Jack, I know I've been busy with promotions lately, and haven't had the time to see you. How are you managing living at school? Would you like to move into the apartment I have nearby? By the way, I brought you a strawberry cake. I didn't have time to get your favorite brand today, but next time I will. Okay. The crowd fell silent. Even Charles's face darkened. I pursed my lips, unwilling to take the cake from her. What's she up to now? I get it. She wants to repeat her old trick and make everyone at school think we have a close relationship, so they'll bully me. Jessica, you really never get tired of using the same methods, do you? With her fans in the mix, this time, I might end up being doused in acid just like in the past. The thought of that searing pain and constant, invasive humiliation made me shudder. Sure enough, as long as I was tied to Charles, nothing good would come of it. Jessica's expression turned dark, and she snapped, "What are you all talking about? What do you mean? Jack's seducing me. The By family has only ever had one young master, and that's Jack. Charles is just a servant in our house. How did he become the heir of the By family?" The system's notifications echoed with a drop in Jessica's favorability. Jessica's favorability decreased by 10. Current favorability, 40. Charles's expression shifted to panic. He had originally assumed that, given Jessica's pity for him, She wouldn't reveal that he was a servant in the Bai family. But now, everyone who had just insulted me was casting venomous glares at him. His face turned pale, and tears streamed down his face as he cried out, "What's wrong with being a servant? At least I'm earning money on my own. Unlike you people who were born with silver spoons in your mouths. Anything you want is handed to you, but even so, you have no right to trample on my dignity. My family might not be as rich as yours, but that doesn't make me any less than you." His speech stunned everyone present, and even Jessica was left speechless with guilt. Seeing that his plan was backfiring, Charles hastily stopped and ran off, tears still streaming down his face. The system chimed in at the right moment. "Congratulations, host. Jessica's favorability increased by 20. Current favorability, 50. Chapter 7. Now that people knew I was the real young master of the Bai family, their attitudes toward me were all a little strange. Daniel even posted an apology on the anonymous forum thread where he had slandered me. I was misled by Charles's lies and posted that thread. All the vague evidence came from Charles. He used me as a pawn. I hope Jack can be the bigger person and forgive me. I sincerely apologize to you, Jack." As a result, there were more people criticizing Charles. They called him vain, unscrupulous, and manipulative, someone who, despite claiming to be self-reliant, would throw a fit when his status was questioned. They pointed out that if he really didn't care about status, why didn't he clarify things when people mistook him for the heir of the Bai family? Too bad I didn't pay much attention to the forums. The only thing I knew was that my elder sister called me, her voice cold as she ordered me to come home. It was obvious she was calling me to defend Charles. I delayed until dusk before finally knocking on the Bai family's door. Charles sat in the center, crying, as usual, and the scene immediately reminded me of the last image I saw before I died in my previous life. Here we go again. Jessica seemed the most conflicted. She hesitated before walking toward me, but ultimately stood by Charles's side. "Jack, you went too far with this." I thought to myself, too far? I don't even know what I've done. It's Charles who hasn't clarified his own identity and has been inciting others to slander me. Have I ever said anything bad about him or defended myself? Maybe they all think I'm trying to frame Charles, but no one's ever cared about how I've been unable to speak due to the events of my past life. Seeing their posture, almost like they were begging for forgiveness, I stopped at the door and didn't step any closer. The Bai family had long since lost its place for me. Jessica's expression shifted, as if she had finally understood something. She hurried toward me. "Jack, you." Suddenly, Charles's system beeped urgently. Warning. Jessica's favorability decreased by 10. Current favorability, 40. Warning. Jessica's favorability decreased by 10. Current favorability, 30. Warning. Laura's favorability decreased by 10. Current favorability, 40. Favorability toward Jessica and Laura was plummeting, but only my elder sister gave me a long, deep look before showing no reaction. Charles, seeing this, rushed to grab my elder sister's hand, crying profusely, "Sandra, you know I'm not like that. What I care about in the Bai family has never been money. It's all of you. You're like my real family, making me feel the warmth of a family. Maybe it's my existence that threatened Jack, which is why he." Before he could finish, he was cut off by my second sister's cold voice. "What do you mean? Maybe. You're saying you're not here for the money, but who would believe that? When Jack sent you those limited edition clothes and sports cars, why didn't you reject them with dignity like Jessica said?" Jessica may have played the role well, but her brain worked slowly. It wasn't until my second sister pointed out the flaws in Charles's words that she realized. Her face filled with rage. "Yeah, if you didn't care, why did you keep insisting on riding in Bai family's car with Jack to school? Why didn't you explain when people mistook you for the Bai family's young master? You clearly care more than anyone." Chapter 8. In no time, both of their favorability ratings were nearly gone. Charles's face turned ashen, and he could only cling desperately to my elder sister. With a gentle gaze, she softly ran her fingers through his hair. "Charles, don't be afraid. As long as you haven't done anything wrong, I will stand by you. So, please don't disappoint me." Charles leaned affectionately against her side. Then, in a corner where no one could see, he shot me a provocative glance. Even though my second and third sister's favorability had dropped, the real power in the Bai family lay with my eldest sister. As long as he won her over, what did he have to worry about? He had already decided on his position as the future male head of the Bai family. In his mind, he was frantically calling out to the system, since Laura and Jessica's favorability is already gone, I'll use their remaining favorability to unlock the next plot point related to Sandra." The system hesitated. "Host, are you sure about this? Once the favorability reaches negative numbers, it will completely shift to hatred, and these female antagonists will utterly despise you." Charles dismissed it. "They're just two female antagonists. How much trouble could they really cause me? Hurry up and exchange it." The system complied. Ding. Plot point unlocked. Sandra will be trapped at sea while signing a contract in half a month. The host can prepare in advance and offer assistance, ensuring that Sandra will be completely under your control. A confident smile spread across Charles's face. I could see his intentions clearly, and I let out a cold laugh. Well, I wish you good luck with your rescue plan. With the system's help, Sandra will likely fall for you. After all, saving her life would be a huge favor. You'll probably use that as leverage to demand marriage. She might even agree. Then, you'll marry her while secretly seducing my second and third sisters. The Bai family will truly be blessed beyond measure. Good luck to you all. A nest of snakes and rats, never to be separated. I only hope to be left alone soon. I don't want to be a pawn in your twisted game. My eldest sister gave me a heavy, complicated look. That gaze was too ambiguous for me to understand, but I boldly guessed that she, like in my past life, wanted me to leave, though she couldn't bring herself to say it. So, I packed my things and left the Bai family. I took everything that belonged to me, even had a new bank card issued to deposit my money. This time, I didn't end up like in my previous life, having to rent a dilapidated apartment. My second and third sisters came to visit me frequently, though I wasn't sure whether it was out of guilt or if they were pretending. The sympathy in their eyes was unmistakable. My second sister always made time to talk to me, as though speaking to a child, but when she saw that I was unresponsive, she would leave with a look of disappointment. My third sister had suggested multiple times that I should see a doctor, but I always refused, shaking my head. Half a month after leaving the Bai family, I received an invitation to an art exhibition at sea, hosted by my favorite artist. Without giving it much thought, I packed my things and accepted the invitation. When I arrived, however, the space allocated for the art exhibition was disappointingly small, and most of the cruise ship was dedicated to leisure activities for the rich and powerful. There, I saw my eldest sister, and beside her, in a suit, standing elegantly and confidently, was Charles. He seemed to have anticipated my arrival, a mocking smile curling at the corners of his lips. He whispered to the system, "Since this plot point involves a death, why can't it be Jack who dies? If he hadn't been born into the Bai family, who would he even be? He's better off being a stepping stone for me. At least he'll die with a purpose." Chapter 9. My eldest sister clearly saw me, frowning as if she had a bad premonition. She turned to look at Charles, seemingly asking him something, but by the time she turned back, I had already disappeared into the crowd. Charles's venomous voice, like a festering wound, echoed in my ear. "Jack, you just wait. Let's see who has the last laugh." I sighed, wanting to curse him, but I didn't know where to begin. I knew his intentions were impure, but I hadn't expected his plan to be so bold. He even managed to knock me unconscious and carry me away while I was standing in the crowd at the exhibition. When I woke up, I found myself dangling outside the ship like bait, barely 2 or 3 meters above the dark, raging sea. Beside me, Charles was in the same predicament. When he saw I was awake, he hurriedly squeezed out a couple of crocodile tears, crying out, "Sandra, Jack's awake. You have to save him. My life isn't worth anything." The man in the suit standing beside him spoke with a deep voice. "So, Sandra, have you made up your mind? One is your biological brother, the other your lover's brother. Who will you choose to save?" By now, I understood exactly what Charles was up to. He just wanted to use my eldest sister's choice to strike at my heart. Unfortunately for him, he miscalculated. The moment I died a tragic death in my past life, I had already abandoned all family ties. It wasn't worth it. I didn't care about my eldest sister's decision. All I cared about was whether I could survive. My eldest sister raised her hand, hesitated for a moment, then slowly pointed at Charles, her voice heavy. "You, let go of Charles. He's innocent." Upon hearing this, the man in the suit burst out laughing. Well, Sandra, I didn't expect you to fall this low, sacrificing your own family to save your lover's family. I guess I didn't misjudge you." He waved his hand, and someone pretended to untie Charles, but in reality, they quickly cut the rope holding me, and the other was also on the verge of snapping. The man in the suit gave a dark look. "You think I don't see through your real intentions? You're just afraid I'll hurt your brother, so you pretended to care about Charles." I was speechless. Could it be that this is her true feeling? Maybe she doesn't care about my life as much as she's just unwilling to take a risk, afraid to put Charles in danger. Anyway, both of them will escape in the end, sitting on a lifeboat kissing each other, rather than using me as a harmless threat. You should just cut Charles down now. Sandra might even cry out of sympathy. My eldest sister's expression changed several times, and in the end, she chose to compromise. "You want the South City tender, right? I'll withdraw from the competition if you let him go." Charles instinctively thought she was talking about him and tearfully said, "Sandra, sister." The man in the suit waved his hand dismissively. "Sandra, do you really think you still have the leverage to negotiate with me? The South City land alone isn't enough. I also want the cooperation between Bai and Chief families." This cooperation, I knew, Was the secret deal Charles had sold out later? Why was this man asking for it now? The plot had shifted in ways I didn't expect. Chapter 10. Charles didn't expect this man to ask for so much. This wasn't what he had discussed at all. His plan had been to use the Bai family as a stepping stone to enter the upper circles, not to cripple the Bai family today. He cleared his throat, trying to remind the men in the suit, but the rope holding him was suddenly cut. The men glanced at him coldly. Why are you coughing? Didn't you tell me this information? What? You don't want me to talk about it now? Charles was completely stunned. He instinctively panicked, completely forgetting that he was still suspended, and hastily tried to explain. What are you talking about? What did I say? He desperately tried to communicate with his eyes, but he had long forgotten that making a deal with a tiger means he, too, must have enough support. Otherwise, he'd just be a tasty snack. The so-called cooperation and contracts, to those in high positions like him, were mere tools to be used. How could they care about someone like Charles? It was just too unfortunate that Charles, relying on his system to predict the plot, naively believed everything would go according to plan. A sudden gust of wind rocked the cruise ship, and the ropes that were already precarious snapped. Charles screamed in fright, "Sandra, save me!" And then he watched as my eldest sister ran towards me, throwing herself into the water. Not only he, but even I widened my eyes in disbelief. My eldest sister held me tightly, even using her body as a cushion. Diving into the sea before me, she struggled to hold onto me, trying to find something to cling to while swallowing a few large mouthfuls of salty seawater. She tried to comfort me. "Jack, don't be afraid. Sister's here." I was stunned for a moment, unsure of what act she was putting on, but only dared to curse silently in my heart. What's with the act? Shouldn't you be yelling for Charles now? Asking for a kiss? My eldest sister's expression stiffened, but fortunately, the rescue I had arranged earlier arrived quickly. Even so, when I was pulled onto the lifeboat, I was shivering from the cold. She threw a thick coat over me, then turned her gaze towards the struggling figures in the distance. Charles wasn't lucky. As soon as he hit the water, a large wave tossed him several dozen meters away. By the time he was rescued, he was barely breathing. Once we reached the shore, the men in the suit, who had never intended for anyone to die, cursed loudly as the police surrounded him. Who called the police? I glanced at him and snorted softly, thinking, who else could it be? Of course, it's me. I knew Charles wasn't keeping his plans hidden. How could I not prepare in advance? I'd overheard Charles's conversation with the system. Even if I didn't know the full plan, I could guess enough. So before getting on the ship, I'd already contacted the rescue team and the police. I made sure that every bad actor would be caught. My eldest sister looked at me for some reason, as if she wanted to laugh. Her lips twitched, but she said nothing. She stared at the unconscious Charles, her expression unreadable, before ordering her men who had arrived in a hurry. Get him treated. Don't let him die. She paused for a moment before adding, but don't let him live too well. Chapter 11. Of course, Charles didn't die, but his body was weak, and after being soaked in the icy seawater for so long, he developed an irreversible condition. What he and the men in the suit had planned could be described as kidnapping and extortion, but on a larger scale, it was definitely intentional harm. With the Bai family stepping in, none of them managed to escape, and they were each sentenced to 5 years in prison. My eldest sister also took me to visit Charles. I wasn't sure of her intentions, so I obediently followed her. Through a thick glass window, Charles looked emaciated, and yet he still firmly believed that my eldest sister had come to rescue him. Sandra, why are you only here now to save me? It's too late. Charles is in so much pain. His eyes were filled with tears. Sandra, it was Jack who incited me. It was all his scheme. He seemed to believe that my eldest sister would trust him and that I wouldn't defend myself, so he quickly threw the blame onto me. My eldest sister looked at him and sneered. By now, playing innocent is pointless. Charles's face turned pale. In his mind, he was desperately cursing the system. System, wasn't Sandra's favorability 80? Why is she treating me like this? According to the system, she should be madly in love with me by now. The system's voice nearly turned into a jumble of static, as the damage to the host was affecting its operations. System repair. Repair failed. Sandra's current favorability 80, 70, 60, minus 80. Charles, what? Me, what? What's going on? How did Sandra's favorability drop so suddenly? It shouldn't be like this. A drop from 80 to minus 80 is ridiculous. Could it really be that Charles's system is malfunctioning? Charles was shocked, crying and shouting, still refusing to believe the system's data, and screamed for my eldest sister. After all, she was the only one who could still pull him out of this mess. But my eldest sister ignored his cries and said coldly, "Looks like your so-called system isn't omnipotent after all. Can't even see through a disguise." Charles and I exchanged surprised glances, both of us thinking the same thing. How did she know? I knew Charles had a system because he was reborn, and I could hear his thoughts, But how did my eldest sister know? The person who caused the surprise didn't seem inclined to answer. She simply looked at Charles with cold eyes. Don't you want to get out? Well, Laura's team has recently collaborated with the National Laboratory on a project studying the human brain. I'm sure a person with a system, like you, would be perfect for their research. No matter how much Charles struggled, crying that he wanted to stay in prison, it was all in vain. He was fitted with a helmet-like device, wrapped up like a mummy, and sent straight to the laboratory. Chapter 12. I was once again forced to move back to the Bai family. After the three sisters parted ways with Charles, it was as if they had suddenly awakened, each scrambling to be kinder to me, but I could never again feel a sense of belonging in this family. Second sister was very busy with the laboratory work. Whenever she came home, she would bring news about Charles. We thought the system was just an intangible concept, but we actually found it in him, she said mysteriously. Guess where the system is? Third sister asked eagerly. Where? Second sister tapped her head. It's in his brain. When we first scanned it, we thought that shadow in his brain was some illness, but now we know it's actually a mass of data that we can't decode with our current technology. Once we crack it, creating any system won't be a problem. As for Charles, according to second sister, he was now a useless person. His body couldn't withstand the intensity of the experiments and had decayed to the point where the laboratory abandoned him completely. After all, the system was in his brain. As long as his brain remained active, that was all that mattered. My eldest sister later had several conversations with me. She told me that it wasn't until I moved back to school that she remembered what had happened before. It turned out she, too, had been reborn. She learned about Charles's system from my thoughts and, fearing I might use some other means against her, she decided to turn the tables and capture both Charles and his system in one fell swoop. In the end, she looked at me, holding my suitcase, and asked in a hoarse voice, Jack, are you really going abroad? I stopped right before the security checkpoint and nodded at her seriously. No matter whether Charles had been punished or whether the three sisters had finally realized their mistakes, the pain I had endured couldn't be erased. I couldn't ignore it, nor did I want to force myself to pretend like nothing had happened and continue living as the carefree young master of the Bai family. Rather than that, I preferred to go abroad to study and pursue my dream of becoming a painter. As for their punishment, perhaps waking up from Charles's deception and realizing what they had done to me was punishment enough for them. After all, their brother, the Bai family's eldest young master, had already died by their own hands. I have to leave. When I spoke, my eldest sister froze. From the moment I realized that my words weren't meant for defense or to be heard by anyone else, my muteness gradually healed, but I had never spoken to them before. This was the first sentence. I walked past the security checkpoint, facing the clear blue sky and the bright, beautiful future ahead. I didn't look back. The moment I decided to leave, I completely abandoned them. Goodbye. I will no longer be your brother. I am my own person. When Sandra and I were together for the 7th year, a close male friend appeared in her life. They talked about everything and had great rapport. Every night, Sandra would make 2 desserts by hand, one for me, and one to take to him. But there was never anything inappropriate, until one day, that man asked her, if I had met you first, would you have married me? Sandra didn't answer but smashed the vase I had given her. Sandra has been absent-minded all day today. She wanted to say something several times but held back. In the end, I spoke first. Did something happen? Sandra frowned slightly and said cautiously, Lily's husband is on a business trip, and she's home alone and scared. She wants me to keep her company, but your arm is seriously injured, and I'm worried about leaving you alone. I should ask her to find another girlfriend. She spoke sincerely, her tone half worried and half caring. While she was talking, I kept looking at her. Her eyes were clear and pure, meeting my gaze directly without dodging. After a moment of silence, she asked softly, what's wrong? I shook my head and said, nothing. You can go. What about you? Alone? I'll ask my mom to come over and take care of me. I had a minor car accident recently and broke my arm. Sandra was terrified. She cried outside the operating room while I was having surgery. Whether in the hospital or at home, she took meticulous care of me, wanting to be by my side 24 hours a day. At night, when my arm hurt too much to sleep, she would stay up, crying at the bedside, sometimes gently rubbing my other hand with her cheek, sometimes wiping the sweat off my forehead with a towel. I saw all this and worried that she would tire herself out and get sick, so I told her to rest early. She told me, how can I sleep when you're like this? What if something happens and I don't find out immediately? I'd have nightmares. Your hand is for designing houses. If anything happens, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. Then she pouted and asked, don't you want me to stay with you? During the day, even if she had to go out for work, she would wait until my mom came over, repeatedly reminding her to take good care of me, going over all the details again and again. It made my mom laugh and cry. This is my own son. How could I neglect him? But today, she hesitated for only 2 seconds before nodding. Take care of yourself. I'll be back as soon as possible. Call me first if anything happens. Don't make me worry." She left in a hurry. She only took a change of clothes and left quickly. I sat there without moving. Even smiled and waved at her when she looked back. When the door closed, I still didn't move, but my stiff back relaxed. Sandra was acting strange. From beginning to end, she was acting strange, but I didn't say an extra word or ask an extra question, because I knew where she was going and who she was going to meet. At first, I didn't know the man's name. I only knew his surname was Ito, and Sandra called him Manager Ito. The first time I saw him was a year ago. I was waiting for Sandra at a newly opened cafe downstairs from her company. I didn't notify her in advance, planning to call her at noon, but she suddenly walked in. The previously lazy receptionist straightened up. Sandra gave him a bright smile. He nodded with a smile. It was a silent understanding. I've always thought that understanding between a man and a woman is a very scary thing. It makes both sides think they are destined for each other. But at that time, the strange feeling just flashed through my mind, and I didn't think much about it. Later, Sandra saw me and was very surprised. She asked why I was there. I said, "Waiting to have lunch with you. Why didn't you call me?" I said, "I didn't want to interrupt your work. Why did you come down?" She pouted and said, "Work stuff, a bit annoying. So I came down for a walk and a cup of coffee to refresh. By the way, the cookies here are delicious. You should try them." She raised her hand and said, "Manager Ito, another plate of cookies." Facing his puzzled gaze, she introduced with a smile, "My husband." That day, they were both very calm. Sandra introduced him calmly. Makoto greeted me calmly and even waived our bill. Sandra said the coffee here was authentic, and after trying it once and finding it good, her company decided to get their afternoon tea from here. Over time, they got familiar with each other. At that time, I thought they were just a simple shopkeeper and customer. I didn't know that those delicious cookies were not sold in their store. I also didn't know that Makoto would send Sandra a message, asking her, "If I had met you first, would you have married me?" Sandra sent me a message at 10 o'clock at night. She said she just had hot pot with Lily and was about to rest. She said she was so tired and wouldn't video call me tonight. She asked me to take care of myself and call her if anything happened. I replied to her, telling her not to worry. I was fine. I asked the cafe server, "Where's Manager Ito? Why isn't he here?" The young girl, not thinking much, smiled and said, "He went out. Left as soon as he went downstairs. Today is our boss's birthday. He must be on a date with his girlfriend, carrying a big bouquet of roses. So romantic." I nodded, took a coffee to go, and left. This city is huge. Finding two people is difficult, but Sandra once bought me a smartwatch. I had slipped it into her handbag before she left. She bought it for me last year, when others were tying small rubber bands on their loved ones' hands. She gave me a smartwatch. "This way, I can always know where you are. I want to check on you. Will you let me?" She said it coyly, but I knew she cared more about the health monitoring than the location tracking. I had fainted from overwork once, and she was scared to death. She wanted to monitor my condition in real time. Of course, I gladly accepted her concern. That smartwatch was expensive, accurately monitoring my heart rate and pulse, and had precise location tracking. Just like now, it had been on the 12th floor of this hotel for 3 hours. I didn't rush over immediately. My arm hurt a bit, so I took a painkiller and a melatonin, lying on the soft bed, listening to white noise for sleep. But even so, I couldn't sleep. Just like that night over a month ago. That was the first time I checked Sandra's phone, because she seemed very disturbed. She cut her hand while peeling an apple for me, spilled a glass of water while pouring it. In an instant, her emotions seemed to collapse, hysterically sweeping everything off the table, including the vase I had customized for her for our wedding anniversary. Looking at the mess, I was silent. Sandra finally calmed down. Looking at the broken vase, she showed a look of regret. She turned to look at me, seeming to want to say something, but in the end, she didn't say a word and quietly started to clean up. Later, I woke up in the middle of the night, and she wasn't there. The dim light in the living room was on. Sandra had drunk several glasses of red wine, her body slumped on the sofa, her long hair hanging loosely over the edge, her face full of tears, even soaking the cushion she was lying on. At that moment, my heart was slow and heavy. With a dying heart, I unlocked her phone. The chat window was still open. That person with only the remark "Ito" had sent a message in the afternoon. "If I had met you first, would you have married me?" Sandra didn't reply. She didn't reply a single word, but that night, my heart died in her phone. I arrived at the hotel at 6 a.m. with my ID. I placed all my belongings at the front desk. "Sandra is my wife, and I want to know which room she booked. If you refuse, I'll call the police." I didn't have the energy to argue with anyone. I was exhausted, physically and mentally drained. The receptionist was stunned for a long time. Her gaze turned from surprise to hesitation and then to pity. Please wait a moment. I'll check for you right away. She quickly gave me the room number. She also asked if I needed any help. I smiled and shook my head. Gathering my things, I went upstairs. Sandra didn't keep me waiting long. I had been standing outside the door for less than 40 minutes when the door opened. Makoto stood there, holding the doorknob, looking dejected. Behind him, a slender hand rested on his arm. A voice came through. Makoto, thank you, but I'm sorry. We really can't do this. Thank you. Thank you for what? Sorry. What are you sorry for? It seemed like a secret code between them. A look of sadness appeared on Makoto's face. Sandra, Alex. The air seemed to freeze at that moment. Sandra's hand, which was resting on Makoto's arm, retracted as if burned, but she didn't come out from behind Makoto. I asked, are you not leaving? Alex. Sandra's face was pale, her voice trembling. So was I. The hand I had behind my back was shaking. I thought I was mentally prepared and could handle this calmly, but when the moment came, I realized I could barely stand. It felt like all my strength disappeared in an instant, and I weakly asked, where's the car? In the underground parking lot. Let's go. My arm, in a sling, accidentally hit the wall. The pain made me gasp. Alex. Sandra hurried to support me. I growled, don't touch me. But she kept her head down, stubbornly refusing to listen. I raised my hand, intending to push her away. Suddenly, Makoto stepped forward, pulling Sandra behind him. What are you going to do? I sneered. Do what? What do you think I'm going to do? Hit her? He stood tall, like a defender of justice, in front of Sandra and said to me, I won't let you touch her. I nodded. Fine, then keep her. Just remind her to divorce me first. Sandra shook off Makoto's hand and shouted, Alex, let's go home. Makoto, feeling hurt, said, I'm trying to help you. Sandra took a step back. Makoto, I have nothing to do with you. I don't need your help. She didn't even give Makoto a glance, only looking at me, and spoke again. Alex, let's go home. Alex, I can explain. Yesterday was Makoto's birthday. He doesn't have friends here, so he wanted me to keep him company. I just spent his birthday with him. Nothing happened between us. It was wrong of me to lie to you, and I apologize. I was just afraid you would be angry and overthink things. I was wrong. If you mind, I won't see him again. He's just a friend. Alex, please don't ignore me. Say something. Okay. Don't scare me. Since we got home, Sandra has said a lot. Explanations, apologies, self-reproach. I wanted to speak, but it felt like my throat was stuffed with cotton. I couldn't get a single word out. I didn't know where to start, or what to say. Finally, I said, word by word, Sandra, let's get a divorce. My words made Sandra tremble violently. She clenched the hem of her clothes and closed her eyes tightly. When she opened them again, it seemed like she suppressed her overwhelming emotions. She said, nothing happened between us. We just drank and chatted. Alex, don't be like this. Okay, I know you're angry. I was wrong. I shouldn't have gone out with him, but you have to believe me. I didn't do anything to betray you. What does it mean to betray me? I said calmly, you probably hugged, right? Maybe even kissed. You smell of smoke. And here, I pointed at her lips, a bite mark. Sandra was stunned. Her lips tightened. I looked at her with sadness. How far does it have to go? Caught in bed. You were in the same room all night. How can you expect me to believe you? Sandra, how can I trust you? Sandra's head drooped in defeat. She closed her eyes, her eyelashes trembling gently. Her voice choked as she said, Alex, I was wrong. I don't know what happened to me. I lost my mind, but I swear, nothing more happened between us. I beg you, for the sake of our years together, give me another chance. Besides, I'm pregnant. We're about to have a baby. She took my hand and placed it on her stomach. I froze, slowly looking down at her stomach. Confusion, a moment of confusion. I suddenly pulled my hand back. What did you say? I'm pregnant. When did you find out? Sandra fell silent, her hand clenching into a small, bloodless fist. I gritted my teeth, feeling like a trapped beast. My voice was hoarse and trembling as I asked, you knew but didn't tell me. You knew and still spent the night with Makoto. Sandra, what are you thinking? You don't want this baby, do you? Because of Makoto, right? You bitch. How dare you? How dare you use this baby as a bargaining chip now? Divorce. Sandra, don't say another word. This year marks the 7th year of Sandra and me being together. People said, aren't you guys in the 7-year itch? I laughed. We've only been married for 3 years, but you've been together for 7 years already. Maybe it's time to have a baby. But in reality, we've never used contraception from the beginning. For a while, Sandra was very anxious about this. She couldn't understand why she couldn't get pregnant. We went to the hospital for various tests. The results showed that our chances of having children were low. My data was all normal. The problem was with her. to prevent Sandra from being affected. Whenever people asked why we didn't have children, I would say, I haven't had enough of the two of us yet. No one can take Sandra from me. We both looked forward to having a child. I used to imagine that if one day we found out Sandra was pregnant, we would be overjoyed. But she didn't tell me. She got pregnant. She had a checkup, but she didn't tell me. I didn't even need to think deeply. I knew she hesitated about whether to keep the baby. Why? Because of Makoto's appearance. The appearance of another man made her uncertain whether she wanted to have a child with me. How ridiculous. How pathetic. Strong emotion surged through my nerves, wave after wave. Finally, I vomited. I clung to the toilet, kneeling on the floor. It was a pain that felt like my organs had shifted. Sandra pounded on the door desperately. She begged me to open the door, begged me to come out. She pleaded softly outside the door, asking me not to joke about my health. And I sat there, disheveled, feeling like the most failed man in the world. I wanted to end it all with dignity, but my dignity had been trampled on the moment Sandra began to waver. That night, I slept in the guest room. Maybe I was too tired. I fell asleep quickly. Early the next morning, before I woke up, Sandra had prepared a full breakfast. When I came out, she stood up with a forced smile. She probably didn't sleep well. She looked terrible, her lips colorless. In the past, I would have felt heartbroken, but now, my heart felt like a pool of dead water. Alex, eat something, I said expressionlessly. Sandra, let's talk. She stood there for a long time, then finally nodded. Okay, where should I start? I said to Sandra, I gave you a chance. I even imagined that things might not have to go that far. Sandra was stunned, looking at me with some confusion. I sneered. That day, Makoto asked you, if you had met him first, would you have married him? Because of that one sentence, you broke down, cried hysterically. When you passed out drunk on the sofa that night, I had already looked at your phone. I always thought that looking through a partner's phone wasn't a good thing to do. Once you start doing that, the distance has already formed. If there's no trust between two people, why stay together? But with that mindset, I still ended up doing it. My words made Sandra freeze. Her body leaned back slightly. It was a subconscious attempt to escape. She clutched the hem of her clothes, showing a pleading expression, her weak voice barely audible. But I didn't reply to him. I rubbed my sore eyes and said, yes. You didn't reply. But not replying is also an answer. The suffocating silence filled the room again. Sandra opened her mouth several times to speak. Finally, she said, if you saw those messages, you should understand that I had never crossed any line with him before. I just treated him as a friend. The night before last, I drank too much, which messed up my emotions. But it stopped there. It didn't go any further. Alex, I really didn't betray you. I didn't look at Sandra, just exhaled a long breath. On April 3rd, we had agreed to go to the movies. It had been a long time since we last went. I bought the tickets, reserved a restaurant, and was really looking forward to it. But you suddenly said you didn't have time because your boss insisted you work overtime. But in reality, it was Makoto who asked you to go singing. Every night, you would make 2 desserts at home, one to keep for me in the evening and one to take to him in the morning. The only exception was on February 14th, when you took matcha chocolates, 13 pieces of chocolate. The elevator in your building requires an internal card. Makoto complained that it took a long time to wait for the elevator every time he delivered food. So you told your boss that your husband needed a card to pick you up when you worked late, but you actually gave it to him. On your birthday, after I fell asleep, you went downstairs at midnight, and Makoto gave you a bracelet. He asked you if he was the first to wish you a happy birthday, and you said yes. Your tacit understanding is, he says go, and you say go. You mention a penthouse. He replies with a 1. You say you're sleepy. He says the coffee is on the way. When you changed cars, you took him for a test drive. He said someone mistook you for a couple, and you sent a shy facepalm emoji. Every day on your way home from work, you chat with him for 27 minutes. How long has it been since we talked that much in one day, except during our honeymoon phase? The Sandra who chats with Makoto is a stranger to me. No, I shouldn't say stranger. The Sandra from university was like that, lively, talkative, even a bit childish, but the person on the other side was no longer me. That feeling of ants gnawing at my skin almost consumed me. Sandra's head hung lower and lower. She said weakly, I just saw him as a confidant. When I was feeling down, I would occasionally want to chat with someone. We were just chatting. Alex, what will it take for you to believe me? A deep sense of powerlessness pulled me down. Sandra, how far does it have to go to be considered cheating? Your closeness, your understanding, is like a guillotine hanging over my head. Is it cheating when the blade falls, or when you hang it above me? The bullet was already in the chamber before the trigger was pulled. I had fantasies. I love Sandra. We've been together for 7 years. I remember every bit of what she did for me. How could she betray me for such a person? But when I turned off my phone and lay down, I knew some things couldn't be ignored. After seeing those messages, After discovering all that, how could I still trust you? When you leave my sight and do something unusual, I know you're going to see him. At that moment, I knew our relationship had already been buried by you, until Sandra agreed to see Makoto one last time, to drink with him one last time. He said, maybe this way I can let go. Sandra, please pity me. Sandra replied, okay. At that moment, the trigger was pulled. I was reborn through death. Sandra, let's get a divorce. Sandra disagreed. She said she was willing to make any compromise, except for divorce. She said she would always make desserts only for me, have lunch downstairs at my company, come home on time every day, and never step into the cafe again. Watching her busy and eager to please, I felt very sad. This was all unnecessary. I never liked compensations after the fact. Divorce is hard. I only realized how hard it is when I wanted to get divorced. When one party disagrees, you have to file a lawsuit. From filing to trial takes at least a month. If there is no major fault, the first trial won't grant the divorce. Then you have to wait 6 months and file again. Will it be granted the second time? Probably, maybe, perhaps. It's torturous, so I decided to move out. What are you doing? Where are you going? I ignored Sandra's words and continued packing my clothes into the suitcase. She went crazy, throwing my things around. What more do you want from me? I've already admitted my mistakes, apologized, and promised there won't be a next time. Why are you still unforgiving? Am I so unforgivable? Can't you give me just one chance for the sake of our years together? Alex, I'm begging you. Can't we be okay? The clothes in my hand wrinkled from my grip. I threw them hard on the floor. Sandra, I'm begging you too. Stop disgusting me. Sandra was scared, stepping back with red-rimmed eyes. She clutched her stomach and held onto the door frame. I won't divorce you. I'm pregnant. You can't divorce me. That was the last thing she said before she fainted. Threatened miscarriage. If symptoms worsen, it could lead to a miscarriage. The doctor's diagnosis was due to emotional upheaval and excessive worry. Her parents rushed over. They scolded me harshly, questioned how I was taking care of Sandra, asked if I was bullying her, causing her stress. I was too tired, too exhausted to even speak. Sandra looked at them nervously and said, Dad, Mom, stop it. Alex. I slowly raised my head, looking at the family of 3 in front of me. I want a divorce from Sandra. What did you say? I said I want a divorce from Sandra. You bastard. Her dad got angry and swung a punch at my face, but I grabbed his arm tightly. Sandra screamed, trying to intervene, but her mom held her back. You've spoiled him too much. You're pregnant, and he wants a divorce. Does he have someone else outside? Sandra stood still. I sneered and said, Sandra, this marriage is over. Because of this commotion, everyone knew about my desire to divorce Sandra. At first, my parents didn't understand, until I told them the real reason. Suddenly, they all fell silent. Sandra's parents didn't come looking for me either. They must have learned the truth. Only Sandra persisted. During her hospital stay, she called me many times, but I didn't answer any of them. She then called my parents. At first, their tone wasn't good, but as Sandra showed weakness and repeatedly mentioned the child, my parents wavered. Maybe, let it go. After all, Sandra is pregnant. Chapter 9 *. Yes, Sandra is pregnant. Everyone thinks this should be a get-out-of-jail-free card, but in reality, it's the last straw that broke the camel's back. I loved her so much. I wholeheartedly looked forward to the arrival of our child. But what about her? She stabbed me in the back, bleeding profusely, deep enough to see the bone. The feeling of being betrayed by someone you love torments me every second. I hate her. I no longer trust her. How can I spend the rest of my life with her? Do I have to wait until the marriage rots to the core to end it? Sandra stayed in the hospital for 15 days. Makoto visited once. He brought a fruit basket and flowers, saying he was there to check on her. But for the first time, Sandra looked at him coldly. Leave. Don't come back. Makoto was silent for a few seconds, then forced a smile and asked, What do you mean? You're not answering my calls or messages. What? We can't even be friends anymore. Does Mr. Wong still have a misunderstanding? I can go explain to him. Makoto. Sandra interrupted him. Let's not contact each other anymore. I wouldn't have known this, but Makoto came to tell me himself. He smoked, his face full of despair. I thought I could win her over. You just showed up a bit earlier than me. But now, I've lost. I give up. She's yours. His self-pity made me laugh. Did Sandra send you? Makoto smirked. Her last request to me. Of course, I'll fulfill it. Really? A deep love without regret. I called Sandra. As soon as she picked up, she said, Alex, I can be discharged soon. You'll come to pick me up, right? I said, abort it. What? The baby. Sandra cried, sobbing uncontrollably. Do you hate me so much that you want to kill our child? Sandra, I spoke calmly. If you have this child, and someday they ask why their parents divorced, what will you tell them? Yes, whether it's during her pregnancy or breastfeeding. I can't divorce her even if I file a lawsuit, but these periods will pass, and I will definitely divorce her. Sandra choked out. Why? I've already apologized to you. I've humbled myself, begged you in tears. What more do you want? Just for making one mistake, do I deserve a death sentence? Can't you give me one chance? Alex, is your heart made of stone? This was the first time she decisively hung up on me. She said, I won't abort the baby, and I won't divorce you. Chapter 11 *. Sandra was discharged from the hospital. She went home but didn't contact me. However, her mother called me repeatedly. At first, her tone was kind. Then, she became angry and ashamed. Alex, you're a man. Can't you be a bit more forgiving? Sandra just had a male friend. Nothing actually happened. Do you really have to be so unforgiving? How ugly. I had already prepared for worse. But then came the news that Sandra's mother was hospitalized. What happened? I asked a friend. He shook his head. Not sure. Seems she had a fight with Sandra's dad. No one knows the exact reason. How is she now? She's awake, but crying and screaming, saying she wants to die. I breathed a sigh of relief. Glad she was awake. My mom asked, aren't you going to visit? I was busy with work and didn't look up. No, since I've decided to part ways, there's no point in giving false hope. It's strange. It seems people can grow up overnight. At first, I thought Sandra's betrayal would make me want to die, that I would be in unbearable pain. But as days passed, it didn't hurt as much. I started to face the reality that my marriage had failed. I didn't plan to visit Sandra's mother, but she called me, saying she wanted to see me. I don't mean anything else. Alex, I just have some things I want to say to you. Her voice was sad and hoarse. It made me hesitate for a long time, but in the end, I went. In just a few days, Sandra's mother looked visibly haggard, and Sandra too. She had lost a lot of weight, looking like she might collapse at any moment. Lost, helpless, in pain. She said, Alex, thank you for coming to see my mom. I nodded at her and walked into the hospital room. Sandra's father cheated. More accurately, he found true love and wants a divorce. And his so-called true love is 2 years younger than Sandra. He said he had never felt so in sync with anyone before. They eat together, fish together, travel together, and have endless conversations. He said he feels alive again. He said he sacrificed his whole life for this family. So why can't he live for himself just once? Sandra's mother became more agitated as she spoke. He said he only feels responsibility towards me and this family. It's me and this family that have held him back. How dare he? Hasn't he ever thought about my sacrifices? How can he negate all our years together with just a few words? He's cheating, and yet he tries to make it sound so noble. I won't let them be together. I'd rather die than let them be together. If he wants to divorce me and be with his new lover, no way. Sandra's mother grabbed my hand, trembling. Alex, you understand me, right? You get what I'm going through, don't you? Only you know what I've been through. He's driving me to death. With her words, I finally understood why she wanted to see me and tell me all this. It turns out you really can't understand the pain until it happens to you. Before, she casually brushed off Sandra's mistake, saying it was just a minor conflict, and blamed me for being petty. But now, when it's happening to her, she says it's driving her to death. I didn't offer comfort or kick her when she was down. After she finished speaking, I pushed her hand away. Facing her hopeful gaze, I said flatly, rest well. I have things to do, so I'll be leaving now. Alex. When I stepped out of the hospital room, Sandra was standing outside. She looked at me with longing in her eyes. Can we talk? Talk? Talk about what? Even with the divorce, I just wanted to resolve it, not talk about it. I have 2 questions for you. First, if your dad hadn't mentioned divorce but had a close female friend, would you empathize with your dad or feel sorry for your mom? Second, your dad's close relationship with this woman didn't just start. Why did he bring up divorce now? After saying this, ignoring Sandra's barely controlled emotions, I walked away. Chapter 13 *. Sandra's father was determined. He was willing to leave with nothing just to get divorced. This shocked everyone. For a long time, a loving family and a good background were Sandra's labels. She had never faced hardships from her family. Her father was someone she admired and depended on. She always said she wanted to marry someone like her father. As for her mother, gentle and calm, she was someone Sandra aspired to be. After graduating, she used her family's connections to enter a company and is now a mid-level manager. So, she hadn't faced many social hardships. The only real turmoil was probably our divorce. I understood Sandra. She knew she was wrong but didn't think she was that wrong. She chose to admit her mistake, thinking that just admitting it would be enough. What's the big deal? But her father's situation seemed to wake her up suddenly. She hadn't contacted me for many days, but she would often appear outside our neighborhood. Her car would be parked there for hours, until one day, she called out to me. We sat on a bench by the road. After a long silence, Sandra spoke. I've thought a lot about the questions you asked me. Later, I asked him why he wanted a divorce now. He said it was because my mom's attitude made him feel that having a close female friend was acceptable. He also thought I could understand him falling for someone else and wouldn't blame him, because I did the same. Since that was the case, he thought we wouldn't mind if he asked for a divorce. As Sandra said this, her hands trembled. So did her voice. I went to see that girl, trying to persuade her to break up with my dad. But she said, that girl said, don't you have a close male friend too? You didn't even want to have a baby because of him. The only difference is you weren't brave enough. In that regard, you should learn from your dad. How could he do that? They were in love all this time. And the day before he asked for a divorce, he hugged my mom before leaving. Sandra buried her face in her hands. She cried for her father's betrayal of their marriage and family. But her tears didn't stir any pity in me. Alex, do you hate me that much? My hand on the bench tightened, and a thorn pricked my finger, causing pain. I recalled those unpleasant experiences. At first, I was sad. Discovering you had such a close male friend, I was very sad. Later, when he confessed and you didn't respond, I was confused. I thought, at least you hadn't betrayed me, right? But you didn't cut ties. You continued to do those things, which made me suffer, until you agreed to meet him that night. I suddenly felt relieved. They say the person involved is often the last to see it. You didn't respond to his confession, not because you didn't want to, but because you couldn't. So you broke down, felt miserable, and cried. Even knowing he had feelings for you, you didn't keep your distance because you couldn't let go. You agreed to drink with him because you had other thoughts. What stopped you? Probably your last shred of moral decency. Sandra, when I realized you liked him, I hated you. Sandra looked at me with pain in her eyes, but I felt a sense of relief. But all that's in the past. Hatred is too intense. It hurts others and oneself. It's unnecessary. Sandra, if you really feel sorry for me, then decisively agree to the divorce and leave us both some dignity. At the end of our conversation, Sandra wiped away her tears. Do you have time tomorrow? Accompany me for the abortion. Just consider it the last time you'll be with me. Sandra and I divorced on a sunny morning. She asked, can we still be friends after the divorce? I shook my head. Let's not. We both need to start over. Sandra wanted to smile, but in the end, she cried, Alex, I'm sorry. I accepted those 3 words calmly. I turned and left without looking back. Sandra's parents were still causing a scene. I heard her father had already set up a home elsewhere. Her mother argued and cursed every day, but it couldn't change her father's determination. So she started blaming Sandra, saying it was Sandra who set the example and influenced her father. One dramatic scene after another. I didn't need to see it myself. Countless people related to me. At first, I still ran into Sandra occasionally, but less and less over time, because her mother's antics affected both her father's career and her own job to varying degrees. Some people sighed, some ridiculed, some watched the drama unfold. Even my mom couldn't help but say, it's a good thing you got out of that mess early, or we would have been affected too. What's wrong with that family? I said nothing to that. Later, I ran into Makoto once. He had a new relationship. He apologized to me, talking about his foolish past and how he's moved on now. His face was full of relief, as if he wanted to laugh off our grudges. It felt ridiculous to me. Are you really apologizing, or just seeking some psychological comfort? Mr. Ito, I have no obligation to make you feel better because you truly destroyed my marriage and family. This guilt is yours to bear. All I needed to do was cut away the dead weight and move on. I had my work and my family. A failed marriage could only hurt me for a while but would never make me suffer for life. The key was to move on in time. Chapter 15, Sandra's Perspective. The first time Sandra met Makoto was shortly after his cafe opened. To deliver food on time, he asked Sandra to let him use the company's internal elevator. Sandra agreed. Later, she asked herself if she would have agreed if it were anyone else. Probably not, because Makoto caught her eye. One glance, and she couldn't forget him. The second time they met, Makoto thanked her by buying her a cup of coffee. So Sandra told her boss to get an extra card for her husband, and he gave her a special cookie he made with a secret recipe. This back and forth led to Sandra and Makoto becoming familiar with each other. Her company's afternoon tea orders went to Makoto. She exchanged contact information with him. Once, she went hiking and ran into Makoto, who also enjoyed it. Sandra felt a long-lost sense of ease. Makoto said, "Shall we hike together from now on?" Sandra smiled but didn't agree. She felt it wasn't right, but eventually, she agreed because they met again at a concert. A concert Alex was supposed to attend with her, but he cancelled for work. Sandra didn't say it, but she was disappointed. Makoto's presence filled that disappointment. They found they had so many similar interests. Such compatibility fascinated Sandra. In casual conversation, she mentioned she made desserts for Alex every day. Makoto was envious. If a woman made me desserts every day, I'd love her to death. Sandra's heart raced. Shall I make some for you? Really? Of course. Sandra thought it was harmless, just making one more portion. So later, on Valentine's Day, Makoto said, being single for so long, I can't stand the smell of love. An employee named Shaoli received 13 pieces of matcha chocolate today. I'm so jealous. It makes me want to fall in love. Without thinking, Sandra responded. Do you have to be in love to receive chocolates? I'll give you some. Sandra didn't think deeply. At that moment, was she hoping Makoto wouldn't fall in love? Did Sandra like Makoto? She probably did, but whether this liking was related to love, Sandra hadn't thought about it, but she knew Makoto's liking was related to love. How could she not know? Women are most sensitive about these things, but she didn't want Makoto to say it. She couldn't give Makoto what he wanted, and didn't want to. She had a happy family and a loving husband. To her, Makoto could only be a friend, but Makoto still confessed in the end. This pained Sandra immensely, so much so that she didn't want to see Alex, as if Alex's existence was an obstacle. Sandra didn't respond to Makoto. Makoto pretended he hadn't asked. They continued their previous interactions, but there were differences. For instance, Makoto's increasingly intimate gestures. For instance, Sandra's hesitation about having the baby. Sandra was pregnant. Half a month after Makoto asked that question. She should have been happy. She should have told Alex immediately, but she didn't. She sat in the car for an hour, tore up the diagnosis, and went to meet Makoto for karaoke. Sandra was confused, thinking and thinking. The baby, Alex, Makoto. She needed to think it over. That night, she lost control. They hugged and kissed. Makoto unbuttoned her clothes. Just short of the final step, Sandra pushed him away. No. She said, not now. She hadn't decided yet. She was married. She was pregnant. She needed more time, but she didn't know she was out of time, because Alex found out. When Sandra opened the door and saw Alex, her heart sank. At first, Sandra didn't think it was serious, or rather, she deliberately deceived herself. She just made a friend she got along with well. She didn't cheat, didn't betray Alex. Alex could be angry, upset. She would apologize, but that was it. Divorce? That was too much. Since Alex found out, Sandra's emotions were tight, constantly jumping between guilt and irritation. When Alex was sad and hurt, she felt guilty, but when he kept mentioning divorce, she got irritated. She just made a mistake not serious enough to be unforgivable. Why couldn't he forgive her once? Sandra didn't understand, until her dad asked for a divorce. During that time, Sandra was in a bad mood. Her mom would complain along with her, complaining that Alex was immature, unforgiving. It wasn't a big deal, but he made it seem like the sky was falling. Life isn't a novel or a fantasy. It can't always be perfect. Every family has its problems. No one is completely clean. To get through life, sometimes you have to turn a blind eye. This was said at the dinner table. Her dad thought for a moment and said, so you think this isn't a big deal? Her mom didn't find it strange, just said indifferently, of course not. What's the big deal? That's how the world is now. That's how the world is now. So her dad said, I fell in love with someone else. Let's divorce. I'll leave with nothing. Her dad had been with that girl for 2 years. Had to call her a girl. After all, she was 2 years younger than Sandra. Her dad said it was the first time he liked someone this much. I've sacrificed so much for family and career. Can't I live for myself once? Listening to her dad talk about his relationship with that girl, Sandra felt slapped in the face. How similar. Her dad and that girl. She and Makoto. How similar. She felt stripped naked in public, humiliated, pained, ashamed, but she couldn't run away, because her mom fainted. If your dad hadn't mentioned divorce but had a close female friend, would you empathize with your dad or feel sorry for your mom? Your dad's relationship with this woman didn't start yesterday. Why did he mention divorce now? Alex's 2 questions were a wake-up call. Sandra finally understood. You only feel the pain when the knife is in your own flesh. What made her decide on divorce was her mom's hysterical outburst. You're just like your dad. The same excuses for cheating. Disgusting. Alex said, can you stop disgusting me? He said, at least your dad admits he fell for someone else. You don't even dare admit it. Sandra, you're worse than your dad. Sandra trembled, crying bitterly. No, it's not like that. But, didn't she hate her dad? She did. She didn't understand. She didn't even want to speak to him. She thought, does Alex hate her like that too? Sandra got scared. From that moment, she finally began to regret.